First of all, thank you very much for taking the time to show up today for AWS Startup Day here in San Francisco. My name is Mackenzie Kosut. I'm the global startup evangelist for AWS. Every year, I go around the world meeting with hundreds of startups to help provide mentorship, guidance, and really learn about what challenges and problems they're solving using AWS today. My background's pretty diverse when it comes to startups. I was one of the original engineers at Tumblr, helped to grow and scale that to about 20 billion page views a month. That was on physical hardware. I never recommend anyone do that ever again. It was quite the experience. I was also a founding engineer at Oscar, a health insurance startup based out of New York City. We built an entire insurance company fully on AWS in about 3 months, and it's still thriving and running today. And most recently at Betterment, which is the world's largest independent robo-advisor. They have about $8 billion in assets under management and fully running on Amazon. So at Amazon, we've worked closely with startups, really of every size and every region, every industry for the past 10 years. In fact, there's more startups who have built and are running on AWS than any other platform out there today. So whether you're fighting to cure cancer with Flatiron Health, whether you're trying to find like a new wine to drink using Vivino, want to build a simple web app and website that's beautiful and nice UI using Wix, every possible industry is somehow being improved by the services being provided by AWS today and by the great engineering efforts by startups like these. And I realize there's a lot of startups on here. It's very small, but definitely go online. You can see a lot of our case studies. From an engineering perspective, what's interesting to me is watching, as cloud has evolved over time, really how startups have also evolved. This is graphing all of our releases and services, new features and services that have been released over the past, since 2008. It's roughly about a 35% year-over-year growth. And you think about trying to launch a company back in 2008 versus what it's like today. It's much, much different for a startup. It's much easier. For example, in 2013, doing real-time streaming analytics, Kinesis really made that easy. You have startups like Supercell out of the Nordics who are doing 45 billion events every day going through Kinesis. That's 45 billion with a B. And to try to build that type of system before a service like Kinesis was around would have been a massive engineering undertaking. You also have companies, for example, Nextdoor here based in San Francisco. When ECS came out, by basically migrating most of their applications over to ECS, they increased the development time by 10x. Just tremendous amount of productivity improvement by leveraging these types of services. And so as we continue to release new services, it makes it easier to take your idea and get it launched. This is a great quote from Jeff Bezos. This is true for every company, regardless of your size. We deal with this every day at Amazon. But in order to get an idea out there, there's a lot of this heavy lifting that you still have to do. And this undifferentiated heavy lifting, fortunately, is covered by a lot of the services that we have at AWS. So these are all the essential building blocks you need to really build any type of application you want. And that's why, over the past 10 years, you've really seen a reduction in what it takes to get an idea to market. Right? 2005, it used to take $5 million of VC funding. A lot of that would go towards data centers. It would take months to develop. Today, people are launching ideas with just a couple grand and single-person teams. I was just in London a few weeks ago and I met this guy who's Alan Richard. He's a single engineer and single founder and employee of his company, Singlebox AI. And this is a picture of him in his office. It's an apartment somewhere in London and probably has the largest electrical bill of the entire city. But what Alan built is all on his own is a self-service deep learning platform where you can basically bring your data in there, you can drag and drop, and start playing with these massive neural networks through a really simple to use UI. Now here's a single person who is able to build all of this with just a little amount of money and all on his own. And I asked, I'm like, what would it take to try to build this even 5, 10 years ago? And he said, without the cloud, this just would not be possible. But it takes more than just building on the most reliable, scalable, flexible, and secure infrastructure to be successful with your idea. It takes a lot of additional business education. Like how do you do proper hiring? How do you even do VC funding? How do you get money to back your idea? There's a lot of business expertise you need to be successful. On top of that, there's a lot of technical advice and guidance that you need as a startup that is not related directly to AWS, and we understand this because of all the companies we work with. And so we sat around many months ago and we said, what type of content could we provide to startups like yourself that would be valuable and useful? And that's really what Startup Day is. You'll notice that a lot of the content isn't specific about building on top of our products and services. It's the technical operational guidance on how to, when and how to build microservices, or how to go through like a production readiness review to make sure your application has all the necessary monitoring, logging, checks in place, so you can feel confident to deploy it out to your users. Also, like, how do you even do proper security in your office? You don't have a dedicated security person, and security goes beyond just the cloud. And so we wanted to gather all this information together and provide it out to you today in this event. Now, we're really fortunate to have a large number of guest speakers who are very reputable here in San Francisco, and you'll hear from each one of these across a wide range of topics. These include well-established VCs, co-founders of companies like ThirdLove and Segment, and many more. So this day is packed with a great amount of content, so be sure to check out as many sessions as you can. On top of that, we have a lot of people from our startup business development team here. For those of you who don't know, we have a large global team, and the background of these employees are all former serial entrepreneurs and VCs. This is a high-level slide just talking about their experience in numbers. I mean, you're talking about 17 former CEOs or co-founders, 17 have been VCs, they've invested more than $1.3 billion in over 400 companies, been a part of over 65 exits worth almost $5 billion with 6 IPOs. And they're here today, and they've also helped a lot with our content. If you're a startup, I guarantee someone on the startup BD team is looking over your account, watching you, and waiting to find ways to interact, engage, and help provide mentorship from the business side. So the big message here is that Amazon is more than just infrastructure. And we want you to tap into our resources. We want you to learn from not just how to build completely reliable, scalable infrastructure, but also learn from our expertise on the business and other technical side of the challenges you might be facing. And so, of course, you've seen the schedule. I'll keep this slide pretty brief, but there's a large number of different tracks to participate in. And one area where we're seeing a lot of startups currently investigating and building with is around AI. And I want to talk very briefly about some of the stuff going on with artificial intelligence and Amazon. Of course, I'm sure you all are very familiar with the Amazon Echo device. That's one piece of our AI background, but our history of AI goes well before that. We've been investing heavily in AI for almost 20 years now. It started even in the early days of just doing search recommendations or product recommendations, rather, similar products and more on Amazon.com. So we have thousands of data scientists researching around the world and helping to build AI here at Amazon. It leads to really great products or really great experiences for our customers. For example, if you've never seen our Kiva robots, this is out of Amazon Robotics. This is from 2003 when that company first began. These are our fulfillment robots. So when you place an order on Amazon.com, these little robots will go out, locate that product in one of the shelves. It'll do a little corkscrew move and pick up the entire shelf of those products and bring it to the package or packer person who will scan that product, put it in a box, and the robot will go and repark that shelf in the warehouse in an optimal location, then charge itself waiting for the next order. There's a tremendous amount of AI that's gone in to make this possible. You think about object detection, depth sensing, machine learning and figuring out optimal placement of the shelves and more. And I could just honestly watch this video all day long. But AI goes way beyond this. I'm sure you've seen the video online of our Prime Air delivery service. This is our goal of delivering a package up to 5 pounds within 30 minutes to someone's doorstep using drones. And this is actual footage out of the UK of one of the orders that was placed. Of course, there's obviously object sensing. You don't want this flying into like a kite or flying into a power line or more. But you can read up on kind of the development of this and where we are today. There's multiple teams globally actively working on this program. But what if you take kind of the general artificial intelligence technologies that are being used in autonomous vehicles. Things like sensor fusion, deep learning, and computer vision, and apply it to a different industry. That's what you get with Amazon Go. If you haven't seen this is our beta store that's live in Seattle. It lets you walk into a store, pick items up on the shelf, and walk out. There's no checkout lines. There's no waiting. And it's heavily using computer vision and more to identify what products are being picked up by the shoppers. So you can just walk in, grab stuff, and walk out. It's a completely seamless experience that's improving, really, shopping, because I don't think anyone likes waiting in lines at a checkout. And so AI really has a long history, and it's part of our heritage at Amazon. And the reason why I want to talk about that is because we understand what it takes to build compelling applications with AI, what it takes to be successful. And that's why there's a really rich ecosystem available for you to build smarter applications. Whether you want higher level services that are built on top of our deep learning networks, for example, recognition, does image recognition, tagging, facial detection, all the way down to the infrastructure of our EC2 instances of GPU that allow fast parallel processing of these neural networks. Everything in between, it's however deep you want to go or whatever type of AI application you want to build, there's a tool or service that'll help you get there. So I want to talk very quickly about one of the higher level services here, which is Amazon Lex. So if you're not familiar with Lex, it's the underlying service that's actually powering Amazon Echo today. When you talk to an Echo, you trigger it, you say, Alexa, what's the weather today? So the wake word wakes up when it hears Alexa, it captures that small bit of audio, and it goes into this Lex service. Lex will then do it'll do natural language processing on that intent. It'll convert that to text. It'll then understand what the person's actually asking, and then map it to a function or a service on the back end. In this case, it's a serverless Lambda function, which will fetch the current weather. So that gets processed, and it gets sent back in text. So the text response here is, it will be sunny and 25 degrees Celsius. And what's great to know about Lex is it's a very easy service to build chatbots and voice interface systems. A lot of people are getting into doing chatbots to build that kind of user experience. Lex makes it incredibly simple to do that using the same technology that's sitting in all of the Echo devices today. But looking at that text that comes back of it will be sunny and 25-degree F, if you try to do that back in the day and you just put that through one of those text-to-speech tools, you'd probably get something like, it'll be sunny and 25-degree C, and it's not a very interesting experience. So Poly is one of our services that will take that text and using 47 different languages, speak it in a very natural way. And I understand that a lot of people say, well, I'm sure your computer sounds natural. Everyone always makes that claim. One area where natural language and actual great pronunciation and articulation of these words is important is in teaching language, right? You have Duolingo, which is the world's largest free service for learning language. Duolingo's old way of building lesson plans used to be hiring a voice actor, getting a studio, recording this audio, normalizing it, cleaning it up, uploading that, doing content distribution network, trying to get that distributed out so the users had it. And it would take months to get kind of one of these plans up and going. Well, when Poly came out and they found out that instead of doing that, they could make one API call and say, here's my text, and I want to hear it back in English, they could get rid of that entire process. So today, you have around the world people learning English, Portuguese, and other languages from a machine. And that's tremendous in terms of demonstrating just how accurate or how good that speech can be. Of course, you also need different ways to run machine learning algorithms. So there's simple services you can deploy that you do, Amazon Machine Learning or EMR to spin up a MapReduce cluster. One area of, machine learning is helping in a lot of great areas. So there's supervised learning algorithms that are supported, right? Things like binary classification. Is this a hot dog or not? Or you have things like multi-classification models, like is this a book, DVD, is this a food item? And also regression testing. Based on historical data, looking at what the weather's been like in the city for the past 5 years, what's the weather likely going to be for tomorrow? And these are all supported in our machine learning models, machine learning service rather. So today, you can start answering these questions very easily just by providing your data, launching a service, and starting to generate these types of answers. And a company that found a lot of value out of this is Cree, which is a startup out of Stockholm. Cree does doctor-on-demand televisits, and in their app, just to give you an idea of like where you can start using machine learning today to kind of improve the experience. When you request a doctor, you have to start providing your symptoms and what conditions you have. And if you're just providing a massive list, you're gonna go through 40,000 conditions. So they took the most common conditions that people submitted and put that through machine learning so they can make recommendations when people say, I have a cough, it's very likely you have a fever, it's not likely you also have a broken toe. So understanding how to make proper recommendations has really improved that experience for these customers using Cree. 1% of the Swedish population uses Cree for their primary care visits, which is a tremendous amount of people. And that experience is being improved today by using Amazon Machine Learning Service. Of course, there's a lot of companies who want to be building and doing everything basically on their own using a lot of these available frameworks. Things like Apache MX, MXNet, TensorFlow, Caffe, and more. And so we make it easy to do a single-click deployment of an Amazon machine image and start playing with this, get up and running in a matter of minutes. And there's great blog posts available, great YouTube videos on how to spin up one of these instances and start tackling and building, tackling problems, building some of these neural networks. And one company I want to talk about who's doing this today and using MXNet on top of AWS to solve an interesting problem is Too Simple. It's a startup out of Beijing. They also have an office in California and San Diego. They started 2 years ago, so September 2015. And they wanted to tackle autonomous vehicles, but they wanted to take the harder challenge. They want to do autonomous 18-wheelers. And the reason why this is a slightly more difficult challenge is traditional autonomous vehicles today use a technology called LiDAR. And LiDAR it's great for doing sensing, but it has an 80-meter distance visibility. Like it can only go 80 meters. And that's great for a vehicle. But a truck doesn't have the same kind of maneuverability or braking that one of these cars has. So you have to have a much higher level of safety and being able to see those types of potential collisions or problems further down the road becomes essential to driving safely. So what they did is they deployed, I think that they now have 9 cameras across the top of their truck, all high def. They combined it with an array of millimeter wave sensors. And they're pulling in high definition video feed that's going through MXNet to do object identification, identifying cars, roads, signs, and more. And what this looks like to the vehicle, on the left, you see identifying everything in real time. But because it's using these high def cameras, it means that it's equally as effective in low lighting conditions, which is one of the biggest challenges now in autonomous vehicles. If you go through a dark tunnel or you have weird lighting conditions because of sunset and shadows being cast, but building the technology this way actually works beautifully day or night. But because they're also using these high-def cameras, they can do per pixel object segmentation. So this street is not painted green. This is their service being able to identify every single pixel that represents that road. You think about having that level of fidelity and identifying objects and potential dangers for your vehicles, and you can build really safe systems. Another tool that they started building is a database that has a 97% accuracy rate where you can take a picture of a vehicle from different angles, upload it, and it'll tell you what car it is, what year it is, and info about that car. Think about being able to not only have a vehicle on the road identify that, yes, there's a car to your left and to your right, but what type of car is it? What's their braking power? What's their horsepower? How is the handling of that car? Think about how that starts changing your risk calculation and how you want that vehicle to drive. Once you start feeding that into these autonomous systems, you're providing more data to provide a safer driving experience for your vehicles. And so this ecosystem gives you access to, again, high-level deep learning services all the way to do-it-yourself. Let me build and start playing with these deep learning frameworks today. And so by doing this, you can build much smarter applications, ones that can see, speak, think, and really ultimately improve that experience for your customer. Once you combine that with the rest of these services within AWS, you can really build any application in a much shorter amount of time compared to years ago. I want to finish by pointing to a couple great resources for startups. First, We have AWS Hot Startups, where every month on our AWS blog, we're featuring startups from around the world, talking about their company and the challenges they're facing and how they're tackling that today. We've also expanded our startup experience at AWS Summit. I don't know if, how many had attended, but if you were there, you would have seen our loft. And there we had great talks by companies like Mapbox, Fedora, Cloud Passage, and more, doing lightning talks about their architecture and how they're, for example, at Mapbox processing massive amounts of data to create that satellite imagery. And if you're not following AWS startups on Twitter, please do. A lot of announcements are there. We have a lot of guest blogs being featured by startups from around the world, talking about their engineering, architecture, and solutions. And we also have a series that I run on there called Startups on Air. And this is where you can tune in live. And we interview founders and engineers from around the world, and you can participate and ask questions and talk to these founders and engage over live video on Twitter. And so tomorrow, for example, we're doing live interviews with Periscope Data founders and also Turo. So if you're interested, tune in. It'll be happening during the afternoon.